Welcome to the Three Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Ben Axelrod. Joining me, as always, is waiting for next year's Craig Lyndall. We took a little Thanksgiving vacation. We didn't have an episode last week.
It was nice.
Well, Thanksgiving, a little off topic before we get to sports. I feel like Thanksgiving is kind of in a Renaissance period. I don't know if that's even the right thing to say, but I feel like Thanksgiving has really emerged as when I was growing up, it was there was Christmas. And that was the big holiday. I feel and I think it's really tied to Black Friday because now it becomes this week-long thing. I feel like Thanksgiving is kind of the premier holiday now.
And I almost think Thanksgiving is back on the pedestal again because Black Friday is falling a little bit by the wayside because even Black Friday now is more online. It used to be Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, Cyber Monday.
Giving Tuesday. I just learned about Giving Tuesday.
But I don't think people actually, I heard that nobody's actually showing up to Black Friday things where people used to get trampled at Walmart.
Yeah.
I stopped in at a Walmart just because I was driving around this week and their Black Friday display was still up. They hadn't sold all of the cheapo DVDs that they were trying to get rid of on Black Friday. So it's not working anymore.
No,
so I think that brings Thanksgiving back.
Yeah, and it's funny because I worked in a mall when I was in college. I worked at...
So did I.
Did you?
Obviously a different mall at a different time period.
I worked at Tuttle Mall in Columbus or in Dublin. Which mall did you work at?
I worked in Boston.
Okay.
I can't remember the name. It was the fancy. It's the Beechwood place of downtown Boston. I worked at Brookstone. Okay,
I worked at a Cardboard Heroes, which I think they used to have at Beechwood, which is basically like a sports, apparel and memorabilia shop.
Lots of jerseys.
Lots of signed photos.
That's way cooler than Brookstone.
Yeah. I don't know.
I sold viscoelastic foam pillows.
Yeah, I see. I've been dying for a Brookstone because they make the best phone chargers. But anyways, it used to be a big deal that we would have to come in the day after Thanksgiving at 4 a.m. Our shifts would all be from 3 a.m. till noon, and Black Friday really. And now everybody starts their Black Friday sale on Monday online, and then they're open. The malls are all open at 6 p.m. on Thanksgiving anyways. It's not, I feel like it's a back in my day, and that's crazy because I just turned 29, but I remember when Black Friday used to mean getting up and going to the mall at 3 a.m, not sitting online on Tuesday.
Yeah, no, it's a desperate industry.
Yeah.
Can't stay out of can't get out of their own way.
The other thing I like about Thanksgiving is it's always consistent. It's on a Thursday.
Yes.
And so Christmas and New Year's Eve are very dependent on what day of the week it is because it affects your entire work schedule. And so it's do you get a long weekend out of it? Do you get an abbreviated vacation?
Is there anything worse than Christmas on a Sunday?
No, because that's doubling. It's double jeopardy.
I want put Christmas on a Tuesday.
Yeah, because then you get the Monday off.
Then you
amazing. Yeah, I'm with you. Anyways, a nice little detour from Cleveland Browns football.
So the Browns even play last week? I don't remember.
The Bengals and Jaguars games just bleed together. I guess same with the Lions game and the Vikings game. I looked back. I thought they had only lost by double digits in their last 3 games. It's been 4 games.
Okay.
We'll get to that in a minute because I don't agree with this notion that they've been ultra competitive.
No, and I'm joking, of course. We probably have to talk about the Jabril Peppers hit.
We do, but
I took a lot of crap.
What was your take? I missed it.
I said I don't love it, but we all know the rules.
Yeah,
we've all seen them get applied. That's a penalty on a defenseless receiver. And I had all these people going, whoa, it's not a penalty. I can't believe it's a wrong flag. It's the first good football play he's made. And I get it. I get that sentiment. But we've all watched NFL football for the last 5 years. We know where it's headed. We know where it's not going back to. So let's skip the part where we're shocked.
Yeah, I think that's definitely, I agree. When he made the hit, and at that point, for one of the few times this season, I was actually invested in a Browns game in the fourth quarter because that was obviously a big play, and basically Cincinnati ran out the clock, or they scored again and then ran out the clock after that. When Peppers made that hit, it was on Josh Malone, the Bengals receiver. and jarred the ball loose, and it was on a big third down play when the Bengals were trying to keep a drive going to end the game. When he made the hit, my first instinct was, I really hope they don't throw a flag, and I'm kind of surprised they didn't throw a flag. And then they threw a flag. Right. It was a late flag, and it was probably from the ref who didn't have the best vantage point of the play. But I think if I was a neutral observer of that game without any investment, my instinct would have been, yeah, that's probably a flag, but I wish it wasn't a flag. If I was a Bengals fan, my first instinct would probably have been, where's the flag? That should be a flag. And so, yeah, it's...
If Corey Coleman takes that hit
right.
from an opposing
in the
safety,
same position,
we want that flag. And this is also... So, for me, it's been a journey. Mm-hmm. Like, I've come from the place where TJ Ward hitting whoever that was in the end zone from the Bengals X number of years ago taught me a lot.
Yeah.
And then I've been through the outrage period where I still will, like, I could get upset right now if we start talking about Paul Kruger getting a 15-yard penalty for grazing the helmet of Andrew Luck like 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, I remember that.
Still makes me mad. But, like, this is all part of the journey. So now I don't get upset when Jabril Peppers earns that flag and then the $24,000+ fine.
Yeah.
I get it. I don't love it.
Right.
But I get it, and it's not going back, so why get upset?
Yeah, I was surprised he got fined, and I don't care that it's not my money. It doesn't. I was, because it seems like, you get a flag, you get a flag. Like, there are much more egregious hits, but I was surprised he got flagged.
It definitely didn't seem evil.
No,
like, it all seemed accidental, and it seemed like it was really close to being
enough.
Close to being legal.
Yeah. And I thought, like, I know a lot of, like, if you're a diehard Browns fan and you're really invested still, you're thinking that play may have cost us the game. And maybe, but so did Corey Coleman's drop. Like, Corey Coleman's drop in the end zone on what may have been DeShone Kizer's best throw of the season. Like, to me, that play played a much larger role in deciding the outcome of that game.
And Cody Kessler throwing 7 times in a series.
Yeah, like was that last week?
I don't know. Didn't DeShone Kizer have to go get checked out for concussion against the Bengals? Yes,
he did.
And Cody Kessler, he handed the ball off once and threw it twice, and unbelievable.
Yeah, so
Except it's so believable.
It's completely believable. I don't. You and I were kind of in a Twitter thread today where we were discussing just how competitive have the Browns been. And people are starting to say, many people are saying, the Browns are competitive, that they're in these games. If you watch these games, you feel like they're in these games. And to a degree, they're right, I think. I think they, it's probably been since the Houston game where it's felt like they completely just got housed.
Yeah.
But the NFL is designed to be competitive. And the Browns have the worst point differential in football, which is actually more alarming considering there's no real outliers. Like, it's not like there's a 40-0 loss. There's, I think, a 31-7 loss to the Bengals. But, like, there's no outliers that would say, well, yeah, that's why their point differential is so skewed.
Well, the outlier here is the fact that they are an NFL team that can't win an NFL game.
Right.
So,
well, that's
but as far as, like, losses go, they have all very reasonable losses. What's unreasonable is that they've lost them all.
Right.
But if the Browns were a 10-loss team, we wouldn't look at the point differential in the losses. We'd be like, yeah, they might be able to take a jump next year.
Right.
The problem is they haven't been able to win any games.
Right, and that's,
But all their losses are reasonable.
I don't...
If that makes any sense.
How do you mean reasonable?
Like, they haven't lost 45-0. Like, even when they've been outclassed, they never quit.
Right.
And then, by the way, if you're looking for any kind of support for Hugh Jackson, the fact that this team does appear to be kind of getting better and is still playing hard at this point is unbelievable.
Oh, I buy that they are playing hard. I buy that they look much more like an NFL team than they did at this point a year ago. Having said all of that, like, I feel like that's a super, super low bar
Sure.
to be clearing in year 2 of a rebuild.
Oh, yeah.
Like, to me, I'm not even a big fan. I know, like, if you wanted to clown this organization and clown this rebuild, like, you can point to 1-26, and that is probably all the evidence you need.
I mean, yeah, that could be your mic drop.
Right, that could be 1-26, and that's the bottom line. Those are the results. It's a results-friendly sport. It's a results-friendly process, and they are 1-26. I don't even like doing that because I think you just kind of have to punt on 1-15 and say that yes, this was a teardown. To me, 0-11 though, that's a big problem. That's the bar should not be competing in these games down the stretch. To me, 0-11, worst point differential in football, like that is in year 2. When they've had 2 years to put in their guys, this is very much Sashi Brown and Paul DePodesta and Andrew Berry's roster. I don't think you're going to go back in history and find a lot of 0-11 teams with the worst point differential in football that were very talented, and that's what a lot of people seem to be hanging their hats on is, well, they're talented though. The results would be better if they were talented.
And you're also back to your original point from early in the season that things are just going to get weird if they don't get one win. Because I think if this team had one win,
right,
we would just be kind of ignoring what's going on and really just looking incrementally at little things here and there. I do think they're talented. I think the roster is horribly flawed with how young and how inexperienced they went, and maybe it will pay off someday.
Yeah.
But you never know what kind of toll the losing will take on the development.
Yeah.
You know, right now it feels like Hugh Jackson still has them developing on an upward trajectory. But at a certain point, if you and I decide to do couch to 5K,
right,
and we just keep hurting our ankles and we're not making any progress, are we going to end up being the best runner we can be?
Right, and it's at some point.
I hate to compare the Browns to couch to 5K, but it's kind of apropos this year.
I completely understand that the win-loss record is not the most important thing at this point in the quote-unquote process.
And we've always agreed with that.
Yeah, and nobody was expecting playoffs this year. Nobody was expecting, I think, even 6-10 would have been looked at as a massive success. Mm-hmm. But I also think there's a big bar between that and 0-11 and worst point differential in football. And I think that, at a certain point, the win-loss record will matter. Like, at a certain point, we're just going to say, this is their record, and this is what we're looking at. And if you're pointing to 8 picks in the first 4 rounds next year, that's well and fine, but that's a lot of rookies to be relying on. And
more David Njoku's who may be foregoing their senior year.
Right, who a lot more redshirt seasons. That's a lot to put on presumably another rookie quarterback.
And that's not to trash David Njoku.
No.
It's really not. Like, I like the kid. I can't wait to see him develop, but I know that it's going to take 2 or 3 years because I've been through this. Right,
and that's, it's funny because there are all these discussions now on sports talk radio about like that middle class of talent. That's what they're kind of missing. And to me, like, Christian Kirksey is a fine middle class of talent.
He is.
But he's being relied upon to be a top-end talent guy.
Yes.
Same with Jamie Collins when he was healthy. Same with a lot of these guys. There's not a lot of top-end talent on this team at this point outside of Myles Garrett and no one else maybe.
Yeah.
Emmanuel Ogbah, if you really, really like Emmanuel Ogbah.
Corey Coleman's not.
No, he's not top-end talent.
Name the number of teams that he'd be the number 1 starter for.
I mean, that's a lot of Browns fans are saying, well, he's going to be a really strong number 2, and it's like maybe, but if that's his upside as a first-round pick,
I think he's a very solid receiver and has potential to be very good, but he's shown no signs of being Antonio Brown.
No, and that's when you take a guy. And I'm not going to cry for a front office that traded out of the most talented top 5 in recent memory, and then really you could say, okay, well, they needed the picks, blah, 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 even though we're starting to see the returns on the picks and it's not but they repeated the same mistake with the 12th pick a year later when they were in a prime position to take a blue chip talent like Deshaun Watson or Malik Hooker. I don't have a lot of sympathy because a lot of these wounds of this roster have also been self-inflicted. It's not a lot of, I'm seeing this comparison to the Sixers, which is a very easy comparison to make. The difference is the Sixers were tearing down what was perennially an 8 seed in the NBA.
With Elton Brand.
Yeah, with Elton Brand and Andre Iguodala and a lot of guys Evan Turner, a lot of guys 6 years, 10 years who you're going to forget. They were tearing it down because they were in that middle class. This regime took over a team that already had the number 2 pick. And that's, the Sixers parallel would be, well, the Sixers tore it down to get that top-end talent like a Ben Simmons or a Joel Embiid. The Browns were already in position to take that top-end talent and traded it to the Eagles and then traded back even further down from the 8 pick. I don't like the Sixers parallel because I don't think it's true or accurate, I should say. And it's just, we've said this before, and arguably whoever is running this draft is set up for a big draft, is set up to make some splashes, is set up with an economy's worth of cap space to play with. But I think it's completely fair at this point, given the results through basically 2 seasons, to question whether this front office is best equipped to be the front office that runs that draft.
Yes, I agree with that. And the reason being is that everything... the one thing I do agree with all the trust the process people is that everything has been set up for this 2018 draft. Mm-hmm. Carson Wentz or not.
Yeah.
Not everybody thought Carson Wentz wasn't a guaranteed thing.
No.
It stinks to watch what he's doing and who he's turning into and knowing that the Browns traded out of that. But they were clearly setting the table for this 2018 draft. The problem becomes, and I see a lot of these comparisons between, well, you keep Hugh Jackson or you keep the front office, and why not change out coaches? But the front office deserves to do this draft because they've been setting up to this point. But as we've seen, it's always about the players.
It's always
about the players. And the people who are picking the players, if you don't have enough confidence in them,
right,
those players are supposed to last 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah, it's
know,
Jimmys and Joes more than X's and O's.
Exactly. And so I'm not saying that they don't deserve this. I don't think anybody deserves anything, but it's hard to feel confident in this front office just because they've collected assets wisely.
Right.
I'm nervous about them using them in a way to create a team.
Right, and it's, people point to the run defense, although that's gone away in the last couple of weeks because they've been getting thrashed on the run game. Because
they were thin.
Yeah.
And once Jamie Collins and Ogba went out.
Yeah, oh my God. Emmanuel Ogba might be like a Pro Bowl talent if this is what his loss does to this defense. See, I can be positive. But they also invested heavily in the wide receivers. And the wide receivers are somehow in a worse place than they were 2 years ago, although we'll get to Josh Gordon in a minute.
I thought this was the Bryce Treggs portion of the conversation.
Oh my God, Bryce Treggs. But it's like they invested they took 4 receivers in 2016, and even if you write off, okay, well, Jordan Payton and Rashard Higgins were mid-round picks. I mean, Ricardo Lewis is a net negative on this team. Corey Coleman can't stay healthy, and look, you can point to signs, and I think he had a 44-yard reception, but like Kenny Britt had a 44-yard reception 2 weeks ago. Like they gave Kenny Britt a big contract. Like they have invested heavily in the wide receiver position and have nothing to show for it, and are arguably worse.
Well, and the idea is that back when Mangini drafted Rabisky and Massaquoi, if they had somehow scored in the 5th round, it's 6th grade. It doesn't matter how you solve the problem. You just have to solve the problem.
Right.
And the Browns used picks on receiver all over the board. They've used undrafted free agents. They've picked apart other people's practice squads, and they still haven't solved it.
Yeah.
That's the issue. It's not about how you do it. It's doing it.
Yeah, and they've invested heavily in quarterback, and you can put that on Hugh Jackson and
of course free agency with Kenny Britt.
Yeah, and it's wild.
But nobody would care about Kenny Britt if Ricardo Lewis was playing like a number 2.
Yeah, no. It's get it done, and it doesn't matter how you do it. You're absolutely right. The one it's just wild. Maybe I just follow the wrong people on Twitter, but it seems like the one thing a lot of people seem to be advocating for is get Hugh Jackson out of here and keep the front office and bring. I just don't. To me, that's the one thing that wouldn't make sense. If you got rid of the front office and somehow brought in a guy who wanted to keep Hugh Jackson, although I think sometimes those relationships can be doomed from the start, that would make sense to me. If you kept it all together and just said, we are sticking to this, I wouldn't necessarily agree with it, and I would have very little confidence, but I would understand it. To me, Hugh Jackson, I don't think Hugh Jackson has done a particularly great job. No. I think he has done some, he's been less than stellar at some of, let's just get to Josh Gordon, because I think this whole thing has been bizarre. And one, it's wild that he's going to play a game for the Cleveland Browns. I mean, there are articles out there from just a year ago that say his time with the Browns is over. The Browns have said his time is over. Hugh Jackson made comments last year that
they didn't just signal it. They flat out said it.
They put it, yeah. They put a voice to it. They had Hugh Jackson, the face and voice of their organization.
The same way they said about Johnny Manziel.
Yeah, and so I want to kind of look at this in depth. I have a big issue with the way the Browns' social media department has been overhyping the return of Josh Gordon. I understand they have to sell something, but they are promoting him like a face of the franchise. And I don't know how you can, one, this is a guy who has struggled with anxiety in his past before, which has led to his substance abuse issues. And I know that he's not going to fall off the wagon because the Browns' Instagram account posted 20 pictures of him. But it all kind of adds up.
And this goes back to the idea, how many times are you going to let the same guy embarrass you?
Right.
And maybe, play the guy.
Yeah.
Have a plan for him.
I have no issue with them.
But why are we talking about it?
I have no issue with them bringing back Josh Gordon. I think they should bring back Josh Gordon. I think if there's anything that's going to salvage this season, Josh Gordon is sadly going to have to be a part of it because that's how far the bar has fallen.
But I think when they asked Hugh Jackson if Josh Gordon was going to play and start, didn't Hugh Jackson say, "Are you nuts?"
It's wild.
Of course he is.
Well, he's flip-flopped 20 times this week. It started with, I have big plans for Josh. I think that was on Monday. Then on Wednesday, a day after a Sports Illustrated story that should raise anybody's antennas about the Josh Gordon experiment came out, Hugh kind of backtracked and said, I'm worried about everything. And then you're right, he was asked if he's going to start on Thursday, and he said, of course he's going to start. Why wouldn't he start?
By the way, I constantly rewrite Browns press releases in my mind. I handle their communications, and I criticize it by saying this is what I would do.
Yeah.
If I was Hugh Jackson, all I would have said was, I'd be nervous if I was a defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Just undersell it. Just say I'm not really sure, and neither do opposing coaches.
Mike Pettine Pettine was in this exact same spot 3 years ago. Was it 3 years ago already? It was 3 years ago. 2014 was 3 years ago. Mike Pettine was in this exact same spot where they're getting Josh Gordon off a 10-game suspension, and he doesn't really know what he has. And maybe I'm just rewriting this in my head, but I feel like he handled it with a lot more dulled down enthusiasm.
Yep.
And they played Josh. I mean, there was no secret they were going to play Josh, but I think
they force-fed him in Atlanta.
Yeah, they force-fed him. Was
that his first game back?
Yes, because they won. Game back. Yeah, no, and then I think they lost to the Colts the next week.
Okay.
But Mike Pettine was fighting for a playoff spot. Was at that point with a team with a winning record.
7 wins.
7 wins. Fighting, no, at that point it would have been 6 wins.
6 wins, you're right.
But fighting for a playoff spot if they were doing the graphic on CBS, the Browns were very much in the hunt. At that point, they might have been in the hunt still for the division title. And he was much more dulled down in his enthusiasm. And I get it. The Browns have to sell something. They have to salvage hope somehow. But to me, it is just, I wrote this, it's misguided at best and it's gross at worst to be promoting Josh Gordon the way that they are from an organizational standpoint and from the coach, Hugh Jackson. I don't think he's handled this part of the head coaching job particularly well, and we've kind of seen that with the rift with him and Sashi Brown. But I have very tempered expectations for the Josh Gordon experiment because we've been down this road before.
No, and this is all part of the organizational direction as a whole. This is where you question if there is that top-down leadership, because this is the kind of thing that you would want to have a comprehensive plan for the entire organization,
right,
from social media to coaching to front office to everybody, to say, this is how we're going to handle the return of Josh Gordon. All right, coaching, how are we going to handle it? Okay, from a communications and media relations standpoint, how are we going to handle it? And they're too busy chopping up his highlights and his workout videos to really have any kind of a plan other than, I don't know.
It's the first social media post I saw that kind of like made me raise an eyebrow was the day he returned to practice. They put out a post promoting Josh Gordon is back. And I thought, okay, that's a little strange, but I get it. And then before the Bengals game, they have a post of Josh Gordon on the sideline. And they're like, Josh is here getting work in. I'm like, you have players who are getting ready to play in an actual game, and you're promoting a guy who's been suspended for like 53 of the last 59 games? I'm like, that seems very strange. And then you're right, they're chopping up every touchdown he scored. And I wrote a column for it on WKYC.com, and I was expecting a lot of backlash because I think a lot of fans that thought I was just being overly critical, and a lot of people agreed with me, and I was surprised. I thought, okay, the people out there are thinking the same thing I'm thinking, and then on Thursday night they're posting every touchdown he scored. It's just, there's no tact to it. There's no regard for Josh. It seems like there's nothing. It's just, you're right. It's
a loser move.
It's a loser move. It's a little thing, but it's also indicative of everything.
Name me another organization that would treat it like this. Name me another one.
In all of sports.
In all of sports. A guy's trying to get back from rehab. He's been out of rehab for like 2 months, I think.
He relapsed as recently as July. And I'm not trying to crap on Josh.
No.
I'm saying treat him with kid gloves. Hold his hand. Don't put him out there and say, hey, we need to sell tickets to the Packers game because we have a 1/4 full stadium in December.
Well,
I'm going to that Packers game, by the way.
I spoke to a ticket rep recently. They're not even thinking about this season. They've already turned the page to next season.
Yeah, how could you?
I don't know, and I don't know how they turn the page in those sales meetings. But
Myles Garrett looks awfully good in short sleeve shirts. That's how I would be selling.
Yes.
Myles Garrett looks good in promo packages. I don't know. It's going to have to be a quarterback. It might have to be a head coach. It might have to be Peyton Manning. I don't know.
And honestly, I could see Josh Gordon going for 150 yards in his first game back. Because I've seen him play football, and I know that he can play football at a level that's totally different than everybody else on the field. I just don't know that he's ready to do that physically or mentally right now. And I would be more like, well, we're going to see what he can do. We got a couple things planned for him.
Yeah.
We're gonna see how we can get him incorporated into what we're doing.
And even if you're lying,
yes.
Even if you're lying and you're saying, hey, Josh, I'm saying this, but you're going to play a lot. You're going to be our starter. Okay.
Have a strategy. Look to me and others on the outside like you have a strategy.
Like there's something to managing expectations.
The Browns, again, look like they have no strategy.
Because they don't.
I know.
Because they don't.
We assume they don't.
There's no way they do.
They didn't even talk about it.
No. Oh my God.
There's like 5 different islands having their own plans for Josh Gordon.
So they play. Who do they play this week?
And meanwhile, even before we get to football, I spent most of my week like reading court documents out of Tennessee.
Wow.
So it's no wonder that they don't have a plan when the top of the food chain in Berea.
They play the Chargers this week. I forgot.
He's dodging an indictment.
Yeah, it's. I wrote that story on WKYC.com. Jimmy Haslam's voice for the first time in this Pilot Flying J trial, in which his name has come up, multiple times because he's the CEO and he's at the top of the food chain. And it's the ex-president who's on trial right now. And the ex-president seemingly seems to be trying to deflect blame to Jimmy Haslam and make it appear as though he was just following company orders. I'm not going to pretend to know all the ins and outs of this trial, and I have to be careful about how I say it because I don't want to misrepresent the trial in and of itself.
No, it's really complex, though.
It's
really hard because I think 14 people have already pled guilty. There are 4 executives
still on trial.
Currently on trial.
2 have immunity.
2, okay.
And
So it's complex.
Right. It's a very complex thing. It was
A lot of moving pieces.
right, and this is something that's been going on since 2013 when
2012 when the raid happened.
the raid happened in 2013, I think. But this all goes back to these recordings now are from 2012.
It was symbolically on tax day.
It was on tax day. I forgot about that aspect of it. But Jimmy Haslam's voice is heard on this recording in what appears to be a training session in which they are discussing the scheme, which is at the root of all of this. And so Jimmy Haslam's defense has kind of been that he isn't aware of any of this and that he was ignorant of everything going on beneath him. And again, I'm not a legal expert. I'm not going to pretend to be. 5 minutes ago, I couldn't remember who the Browns were playing this week, so I'm not the person most qualified to speak about it. But it would seem from this recording that it's going to be hard for Jimmy Haslam to continue to claim, and he's not been charged. He continues to claim that he had no knowledge of any of this. But this recording would seem to indicate otherwise.
And the other part of it so what we're trying to figure out is whether he's going to get indicted.
Right.
And it does seem to be kind of building in that direction. And I don't know anything in particular either, but I think it's awfully interesting that the announcement to sell 38.6% of the company 3 weeks before the trial starts to Warren Buffett, I just don't think that's an accident. I don't think that anybody wants to do that. I think that's a move that somebody makes in order to kind of an insurance policy.
Take it to us. Take it to the Browns. Who knew D. Haslam's name 3 years ago? Nobody knew D. Haslam's name 3 years ago.
Nope.
And now there is this push to present D. Haslam as like the controlling partner in the Cleveland Browns, and in this PR push that she's the one cleaning everything up in the organization, and that she's actually the person who's running things, and that she's turned the ship around. And while that could be, look, things were bad in Berea in 2015. I mean, that was for everything that's gone wrong in 1 and 26 over the last 2 years, 2015 was about as bad as it could get inside that building and on the field, from everything with Johnny Manziel to everything behind the scenes. And you could say, okay, well, it would make sense from a PR perspective to say, well, D. Haslam's running the show right now. But I think this D. Haslam stuff is not coincidental. I think that D. Haslam's newfound prominence in the Cleveland Browns organization, I would assume, is very much tied to what you said, the selling of the controlling interest of Pilot Flying J, and kind of having that insurance policy in place in case something were to go down with Jimmy Haslam and a potential indictment. Yes.
And these things, they didn't raid his business on tax day.
Right.
They did that for a reason.
Yeah.
That was symbolic. He sells his company 3 weeks before the trial starts, or makes the agreement to sell the company 3 weeks before the trial starts. That's not an accident.
Yeah.
D. Haslam's name coming up is not an accident. And now that Jimmy Haslam's voice is heard on a covert tape where it appears that he's talking about the exact fraud scheme that he said he knew nothing about,
pretty direct references.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's I understand the people. It behooves the people on trial to push this upward up the food chain,
and they might be lying.
They might be lying. Yeah, I mean these are indicted people. These are desperate people. These are people facing jail sentences. But yeah, this thing has been looming for 4 years now, 5 years almost. And it doesn't appear to be going away. And this is, again, the person in charge of the Cleveland. So that's,
let me just take this opportunity to thank the Rooney family, the NFL commissioner, and the others who unanimously approved the ownership of Jimmy Haslam for the Cleveland Browns. I just want to thank you.
We wanted this, though. Be careful what you wish for, because
we didn't vet him.
We didn't know.
We didn't want somebody who was going to be indicted.
No, it's the same thing when you go back and find somebody's tweets about they didn't want Carson Wentz either. Well, they're not the one getting paid to evaluate Carson Wentz. That's way above our pay grade to vet NFL owners. But yes, I guess that's to kind of bring this full circle on the Browns. Every time that somebody wants to give the Browns the benefit of the doubt, and say, well, they have this plan in place, and it all points to 2018, and they're going to nail these picks and get the quarterback of the future and the wide receiver of the future and the middle linebacker of the future and all of that. That's well and fine, and you're more than entitled to believe that. And I understand part of being a fan, a little bit like pro wrestling, is suspending disbelief and just thinking everything's going to be okay, and that you have to sell yourself on it somehow, because if you get bitter like I do, then these Sundays feel so meaningless. But just remember, every time you're giving the Browns organization as a whole the benefit of the doubt that they are going to stick with this plan and that it's the right plan, the guy at the top of all of it is the guy whose voice was on that recording. And yes, that is something that has plagued this organization dating back to 2012. The parallels between this Tennessee coaching search, which Jimmy Haslam, you would assume, has his hands all over, or fingerprints all over, no pun intended, and the Browns coaching search at the end of the 2012 season are striking, where they can't find a candidate and they wind up just firing the AD, just like they wound up just firing Joe Banner and Mike Lombardi at the end of the coaching search. It's amazing. It's not coincidental, and I think if you want to suspend disbelief and have the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the Browns, you're more than entitled to. But if you want to be bitter like I do and be skeptical like I am, I think that's a very well-reasoned opinion as well.
Yeah, well, and that's the hard thing. Like I can buy a lot of these things about the plan and the timing of the plan and how it all sets up for this to be kind of the peak of the process, where they finally cash in all those chips and they set themselves up for the real build, not the rebuild, the build, where now we've taken that next step and the next step and the next step. But every single time you bring anything like that up, there's absolutely no way you can argue somebody who says shut up. Yeah. They're losers. They've always been losers. They're probably going to blow it up, and et cetera, et cetera. And that's why, like, I actually don't think they have an option of blowing it up this time. I think somebody might end up leaving, and they might end up bringing some new people in, but it better feel more like an addition than any kind of a subtraction.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, you said 1 in 26 is kind of the mic drop. On a bigger level, like Jimmy Haslam's kind of the mic drop, because you argue with other Browns fans, and they'll say, well, it all adds up to 2018, and you say, okay, but what's Jimmy Haslam going to do before that? And they say, well, this is going to test his patience, and he has a pretty proven track record when it comes to that patience. Anything else on the Browns?
No.
I'm a little worried about the Indians.
Okay.
It doesn't seem like Carlos Santana's coming back. It doesn't seem like Jay Bruce is coming back, and I guess I don't like what that represents.
It feels bad.
Yeah.
But this team has more depth in the farm system than they've ever had. Just like they were able to uncover Jay Bruce at an amazing value, they're going to have to find another productive player at an amazing value. Just because it's not the guys we know, they're going to find somebody. They're going to find people, whether it works or not. It's right. Is there a 60% chance or a 40% chance? I don't know. But this was kind of the cost of a top-heavy acquisition like Edwin Encarnacion. Yeah. And if I really put a gun to your head and I said, would you rather have Encarnacion or Carlos Santana? What's your answer?
Oh, Edwin, in a heartbeat. I mean, that's if you would have told me a year ago.
But I'm with you. It feels so bad.
It just doesn't, because last year.
I wanted to bring them all back.
Last year they went all in.
Yeah.
And this year, if you're losing these two guys who, Carlos Santana is a fringe core guy. Like, Carlos Santana is, I know they got him in the Casey Blake deal, but he's pretty much a homegrown guy. Like, he's a guy who they acquired as a minor leaguer and raised through the minor league system, and he was one of those big call-ups when, you were excited when they finally called up Carlos Santana.
It's very much like Sandy Alomar.
Yeah. I mean, Jay Bruce is...
Sandy Alomar played a couple games for the Padres.
Yeah, right.
But he basically was an Indian for life.
I mean, Jay Bruce, I loved the Jay Bruce experience.
Yeah.
But... the whole time it felt like a rental, and this probably felt like the end game was he was going to leave at the end of the year. But to lose him and lose, look, if you would have said a year ago when they signed Edwin, well, this is going to cost them Carlos next year, I say okay, I'll take that loss. But just they go all in last year, and then to lose both guys. You're right. I mean, it's not. They're still going to be the heavy favorites in the AL Central. They might still be the favorites in the American League. But I just don't. I don't like what it represents. You're right. It's not fun and it's not sexy to go through. Even though in the end it may not impact where this team lands next October.
I have to say though, the way the market has been developing, seemingly developing for Carlos Santana, it kind of makes me feel better about the Brantley option.
I think they did.
They just knew.
They're not dumb. This is a pretty smart organization.
And ultimately, as much as we think $12 million is a lot of money for Michael Brantley, it's just not a lot of money in Major League Baseball to control a guy with potential like that. And it's a flyer. And they're taking a flyer for one final year on a guy who's also basically homegrown Cleveland.
Yeah.
Carlos Santana is more valuable, but he's also going to probably make double.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what we're down to.
Yeah, and I think kind of the potential of a Lindor extension looms over all of this.
Jose Ramirez.
Yeah, I mean, they have Jose tied up
for a
while.
But when you look at Lindor and Ramirez, you're looking at two guys who, I frequently say this about guys like Lindor and Ramirez, they should never play, they should never swing a bat for another organization their entire careers.
No, I agree. If Lindor became the Indians' Joe Mauer and that contract just weighed them down, because that's going to be a very large contract, I would feel better about that than ever seeing Francisco Lindor play in another uniform.
I'd make that bet. I would just make it.
Yeah.
He's potentially our Jeter.
Yeah.
He's potentially, that caliber of player.
He's the biggest star.
Even when Jeter was overrated, he was valuable. Or not overrated, maybe overpaid or...
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. He might be... I can't remember another Indians player, even going back to the 90s, being as big of a star as Francisco Lindor.
And by the way, I think Lindor is potentially and maybe a better player than Jeter. I just meant from that star standpoint.
I completely...
Okay. I'm waiting for people to get at me and say, you think Derek Jeter's as good of a player as Francisco? No,
I think Francisco Lindor is right. Maybe it's just baseball is different now, and maybe it's a little more star-oriented than it was in the 90s. But I can't remember another Indians player being as universally thought of as like a perennial MVP candidate as Francisco Lindor has been.
Manny Ramirez. It's been since Manny.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I'd like to see that. I don't follow the Indians closely enough to know if it's realistic for them to re-sign him this offseason, or if he's just waiting to see Bryce Harper make $500 million next offseason, or how this is going to shake out. But all of this feels better if you feel like this is all going toward a Lindor extension.
And this organization needs to prove that they can replace these guys with their farm system.
Yeah.
And so far, guys like Lindor, guys like Jose Ramirez. I always forget the name of the 7-foot-tall center fielder
Bradley Zimmer.
Yeah, these guys have tons of potential.
Yeah,
and it's about making those pieces work rather than bringing somebody who's in their 30s back.
Yeah.
When they've earned the biggest contract of their lifetime.
Yeah, I don't disagree. How are you processing this Cavs winning streak?
Love it.
It's fun.
Just enjoying it.
It feels.
I'm also enjoying that it kind of happened when Derrick Rose went out.
Well, yeah, I don't think we're going to see Derrick Rose play another minute for the Cavs.
You really think so?
I don't think he's coming back.
Wow.
I don't. By the time he comes back, Isaiah will probably be back. I just don't think there's a. I mean, it's not. I don't think the winning streak's a coincidence. I think Dwayne Wade, this has been a revelation, and it's been incredible, and it's exceeded even my expectations, and I had fairly large expectations for Dwayne Wade. But if Dwayne Wade is playing like this, and he's like your closing point guard, I just don't. If Isaiah's back, I don't see where Derrick Rose makes sense, and Derrick Rose isn't a guy. It's not NBA 2K. You can't just take Derrick Rose's minutes down to 0 and expect everything to be okay. This was a guy who a month ago was talking about making teams next year pay him double for what he does this year. I don't think it's a coincidence this 10-game winning streak happened when he was injured. All of the people who know basketball way more than me said he's been an awful fit for this team and doesn't make any sense.
And even additionally, just for him as an individual, I think he's very much Grady Sizemore. He just doesn't know how to play without that violent edge.
Right.
And he's just never going to be, we've talked a lot about the impact of all those extra games, deep playoff runs for an energy guy like Tristan Thompson. And it goes to show I hate the unicorn thing, but just what a unicorn LeBron is, that he can continue to do it over and over and over and not break down.
Yeah.
Normal people can't do that. And Derrick Rose, at his size, playing as violently as he did for so many years getting to the basket, is just unsustainable, and it's caught up to him. It would appear he's not mentally in a good place either. And while I am very sympathetic to that, and while I understand how he got there, because it's very tough to. This is a guy who was the MVP 5 years ago, and now he can't stay on the court. It seems like for more than 2 games in a row. I just don't think that's something the Cavs need around their team, though, and I don't think it's really something that they're going to concern themselves with, especially as Isaiah comes back. Dwayne Wade is playing incredibly. I think LeBron's going to win MVP this year. I think he's going for it. And the track record of the Cavaliers, and I know this was under Griffin, but the track record of the Cavaliers when they make one of these off-season moves, especially on a veteran, and it doesn't work out, Mike Dunleavy, they shutter it.
It feels very Bynum-y. It feels very...
Yes. Well, I was going to give it a Dunleavy edge, but you could go Andrew Bynum.
Bynum was a malcontent, reportedly a malcontent, but yeah, you're right. That's
pulling up from half court in
the
middle of practice. Those stories are incredible.
Oh man, it's somehow amazing that even once LeBron left, the Cavs managed to be fascinating, because I didn't think that was going to happen.
That's what happens when you draft neon waiters.
Yeah. Oh my God. But yeah, it's fun, and I'm glad they got on this, because the first month of the season, as much as I tried to talk myself into just enjoying LeBron, it wasn't very much fun. So this is fun.
We knew it was going to take some time.
Yeah, and now we can get excited about Isaiah coming back and not feel like everything hinges on Isaiah.
Is this the first time since LeBron was with the Heat where, when he was off the court, the team wasn't losing ground?
Well, it hasn't happened since he came back, so yes. Yeah, it hasn't happened since.
I can't even think of a streak where the Cavs were okay when he was off the court.
No, it actually usually was the inverse, where LeBron was usually better, where the team was better when it was LeBron and the bench players.
Yes.
That, and that's crazy.
Inconceivable.
Yeah. But yeah, at least we have the Cavs.
For now.
That's going to do it for today's 3 Sports Podcast. He's Craig Lyndall from Waiting for Next Year. I'm Ben Axelrod from WKYC. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe on iTunes, leave a rating, leave a review, tell a friend. We'll be back with you next week breaking down all the latest in Cleveland sports. Thanks for listening, guys.